Hello and welcome. This is Working Class to World Class. But before we go any further, I do have a little favour of you. If you could hit that follow or subscribe button, then that would be a massive help. Thank you. In this episode, I'm catching up with someone that knows all about punk because it is the lead singer of the Rattlesnakes. Now, this guy has led what you could class as a pretty humble life, now in one of the top bands touring the world with amazing fans that they really empower. He talks about how his music is a safe haven to vent that frustration and anger and emotion in a really safe and controlled way. It really is a tremendously fantastic story, and he is a wonderful human. I hope you enjoy. Breaking through the barriers of adversity. I'm Lynn Lester, and this is Working Class to World Class. So Frank, thanks so much for joining me today, which is really cool, from your home to mine, which is nice. Well, where are you today?
I'm in the Palace in Hoxton Street. It's a little less of a palace, and it's a really lovely. It's just a little 2-bed flat with me and my daughter, and I just have I just have a desk and I have a keyboard in my room, and it's just got everything I need. And I got this place because I have a tattoo shop on Hoxton Street, just up the road. So I used to live quite far out, and now I've got a 90-second commute now, and that is
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'm based in Clydebank. I'm just in Scotland, so just outside of Glasgow. People have referred to it as the arse end of Glasgow, but for me, it's Clydebank. It's home. It's where I was brought up, so I love it. So for anyone tuning in right now, who is Frank Carter?
I'm asking myself that every week, to be honest, at the minute. So I am the eldest of 4 boys. I grew up with my mum and dad in Hertfordshire, a little town called Hemel Hempstead, which is just northwest of London, really. So we were just far enough out to have green and blue skies and, the canal and the countryside, but close enough that we could access London, and we had all the tools. So, and growing up, I was just I was an arty, just really creative. I loved drawing, I loved writing, I loved singing. I maybe didn't know which one would have been the focus, because I was always looking at how I could maybe make one of those jobs work, and I certainly didn't believe it would be in music. I did not think that was going to happen. But yeah, that's like Frank in a nutshell. Just a very young, creative, excitable human who just wanted to do something he loved for the rest of his life. I wanted to make that work. So.
And that's the thing, isn't it? Because it's all about what you love. I mean, so the big thing that we haven't talked about is obviously Frank Carter and the Rattlesnakes. So a cool name, pretty creative.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're obviously, you're downplaying it. You can tell you're really humble because you're downplaying it. Obviously, you sold out. Was it Alexander Palace? You sold that out. So, I mean, tell us a bit about your band. So, because there'll be a lot of people tuning in that don't actually know it, and there'll be a lot of people that love it.
So I come from sort of hardcore punk scene of music many, many years ago. The band I'm in now is the Rattlesnakes, and that's me and Dean Richardson is my close partner in the band. Every album we've written together. It started. This is my third band. Okay, so my first band, Gallows, in 2004. We signed a huge record deal to Warner Brothers, and it just exploded. And we were then, within very quick time, I was just traveling the world, and all from the power of like rage and punk rock, really. So which was quite something. That ended in 2011, and then I started a rock band called Pure Love, and that's where I learned a lot of lessons. It probably wasn't what people wanted or expected. And so it was quite a hard sell, and that's where I really learned how to hone some of the fury and the rage to be a performer, to become more of an entertainer rather than a walking incendiary bomb. you know. And then I shut that down because it wasn't really working, and I began to focus more on my family. I got married and had a child, and I was living in New York at the time. I've been in Brooklyn for 5 years, and came home. And when I got there, I realized that was when I realized, okay, I've shut music out of my life, and that's my identity. That was my whole adult identity. That was who I knew I was. You know, some people knew that I painted and I tattooed as well, but music fed my soul. So I reached out to my friend Dean. I said, "Look, I want to start a punk band, one tour, one album, and the rest is history." He talks about it all the time. He said he lied to me. He said because he was out. He checked out music as well, and he'd had a few successes and a few failures, and he sort of thought, all right, we'll have one more burn with the garage band, you know, and it's just gone from strength to strength, and I think that's because at no point have we ever really overthought it. You know, it's just been about feeling, and it's been about everything we learned, what it is now. And yeah, so you said we sold at Alexandra Palace, which honestly, that moment, that's 10,000 people in London, and when you see that in front of you, none of my bands, no matter how successful they've been, no matter how big the record deal, how much we traveled the world, none of them have been able to do that. And to do that as an independent band with my friends, with music for us, um, was such a huge achievement. And then 4 weeks later, we entered a global pandemic and the whole world stopped. And we still talk about that gig as being such a pinnacle moment of our career. Not because we made it to there, but because of what it did for us for the next 2 years, which is that it gave us a light to hold on to. Because for all of my friends in music or the arts, to lose you can sit in the studio and create the art. If you can't share it, it becomes poison eventually. You know, it turns to a toxic thing that you have to get it out. And so we just kept reminding ourselves. Okay, every 2-3 weeks we'd send each other a picture of us on stage at Alexandra Palace, like it's gonna be okay, you know. So yeah, it's been a wild ride.
Oh my God, it's like a pinch yourself moment. Like it must have
Yeah,
been so surreal. So we're going to come to that because you make it sound dead easy. Like you're like, yeah, we just thought we'd put the band together. We're just going on a tour. Like it just sounds so like rolling off the tongue so easy. So we will come to that as to how you done it. But I want to kind of take you back down memory lane because you weren't always selling out big gigs and whatever else. So what was your upbringing like?
it was sweet. It was calm. I'm the oldest of four, like I said. My mum and dad had me quite young. They were 21 when they had me. Um, I wouldn't advise that for anyone. It seems chaos. I had my daughter at 30, and like I remember a few weeks after that thinking I'm not ready, and then looking at my mum holding my daughter across the room, thinking, oh my god, how did you do this? Um, it was, my dad was working in. It was a very traditional, fairly patriarchal household. Um, I think my dad was quite busy. He's sort of got a very switched on technological mind. So I didn't see a lot of him when I was younger, but when I did see him, it was it was gifted with music. His love was music, but he was into he was an engineer. So if he'd been in a band, it probably would have been in a jazz band. Do you know what I mean? Like it's one of those. So um, he was a DJ growing up. So we had when he was young, that's how him and my mum met. And so we had a lot of music in the house, a lot of records. And because he was, you know, in computing, he was at the head of the technological curve. So we had a nice sound system. I didn't know this at the time, but now I know we had a nice sound system, and that was where our money went. Like we like my dad spent it on good speakers. We probably couldn't always pay the gas and electric bill to put them on, but we had like it's such a weird thing when I sit back and think about it now. Like I had like plastic football boots, but we had probably like 300 albums. So I grew up listening to Madness and Phil Collins and Fine Young Cannibals and UB40 and all of this stuff. And that, like, that all goes in. That all goes in, and when you're young and you're trying to find your place in the world, and you're from a smaller satellite town, um, I was always trying to find my way out. You never really realize what you've got until you want to go. You want to jump from the little pond and swim in the big sea. And so I always had just quite a. I realized early on, like, if I have my own access to funds, then I have freedom. That's what money was to me, was freedom. So I just worked, and that's when probably the first real moment happened for me, was when I realized at 16 years old, I got a summer job. All my friends were just out doing whatever. I got a summer job working in the Ovaltine factory in Kings Langley. Scrub, like, with a hairnet, climbing in. I was so small, they sent me in the machine to scrub with a scraper all the dried Ovaltine off this machine. I smelled like malted milk for literally like 4 years after that. So and I worked shift work for a whole summer, like 10 weeks of just shift work, 6 till 2, 2 till 10. And I missed the summer of being a kid, really. And what it did was, it gave me a load of money. I spent it all on music, and that's when I realized, okay, we have to work to get this thing that allows us our freedom. And so if I have to work, I'm going to work the process out to do something that I enjoy every day. And given my mind, and knowing, like, I'm quite, I have a lot, I'm very ADHD, if that's even a thing. I don't know. Like, I'm just, I move a lot. I'm creative. I started working on the process to become a tattooer, but I was always in a punk band as well. And I was grafting. Even now, when I think back to when you're talking about how did it begin, I remember, like, one of the sorry, I know I'm flitting about. One of the big questions I get asked from young kids all the time is, what's the best bit of advice you can give me for a starting musician, right? And my band will tell you, play every day, right? And I tell them, if you can't get a gig, book the venue yourself. Like, book a venue, find a band in your area that's doing well, pay them £100 to play, and make sure that you're on that bill, and you're not opening and you're not headlining, you're in the middle. And then it's on you to make everyone in that room understand, like, that they want to go and see you again. That's like my honestly, and that's what I did. We couldn't get gigs, so we booked them ourselves. We never headlined. We were always in the middle. We were always like, we're trying not to stage the headliner, but yeah. So yeah,
That's so cool.
Yeah, that's kind of where I've come from.
Yeah, no, that's cool, because you were saying, like, you talked about, you knew you wanted to get out because you were like a small fish, tiny little pond, you want to play in the big world stage. But, like, so see, before you even got to that, like, what were you like at school? Were you good at school, or?
I was very, I'm a small boy, I'm a small, I'm like 5'7", I'm getting shorter, 5'7" on a good day. I'm bright ginger hair. I stood out, and I guess at school, probably for some of the wrong reasons, So I enjoyed singing. I had, when I was young, I had a really beautiful choir voice. I sang in a choir. Puberty hit and decimated that. I didn't know what to do with it, but I was like, it's in there somewhere. I've just got to find it. And then I discovered, punk. But I didn't have a dedicated mind, right? In the same way that you need to have if you're going to play an instrument. So I could never really understand it. I couldn't. Drawing, I can get my hands to do what I need. Playing a guitar, I've been playing a guitar. I've got a guitar right here. It's my arch nemesis, this thing. Like, I can't, like, it will never do what I want. At school, I really just, every single lesson was trying to find the way to make it into words or into pictures, so English, I loved English because I could paint pictures with my words. Yeah. And once I learned that, that's when I became really, really attached to poetry and music and I started looking at lyrics and really understanding, oh, these are storytellers. They're so visual. And then they say to you, that's why art and photography is so powerful. Pictures worth 1,000 words. But if you can paint it, if there's that's why a song is so amazing and it transcends all boundaries because it's a picture, but it isn't. And so like when you hear it, everybody sees it a different way. And when they're looking at a different version of the same picture, that's infinite words, you know.
Wow,
So
your words are like poetry. So I'm transcended into this like yeah, magical place. And you were saying like, at school you stood out for the wrong reasons. Can you sort of dig a bit deeper into that? Like what?
I think when you're at school, the one thing you want to do is fit in. You don't. We're looking for ways. At least back then, I don't really know how it is now in like at school, but I think when you stand out at school, you try not to draw attention to yourself. You move into that place, that age from 12 to sort of 18, you just want to be, you just want to move with the crowd because it feels dangerous at that point. You're starting to realize about fear and self-awareness and embarrassment and a lot of that, and you're navigating your identity,
Yeah.
and within your identity, at that age as well, your sexual identity comes into play. You start learning about connecting with people and relationships. You start thinking about your familial relationships, where you are in your family, what your role is. At that time, I went into that year and I was really sure. I was like, and then my mum, bless her, like she got me. She couldn't find a blazer in my size from the place that everyone gets their blazers from for the school. So she went to another shop and she got me a green blazer, but mine was 2 shades brighter than everyone else's. Do you know what I mean? And it had shoulder pads. I think basically she just found me like a cute 80s like power blazer. And I was like, oh my God. Like, so yeah, it was I think at school you just want to fly under the radar. And I was like a beacon of just difference to everyone else. Everyone else was this kind of average height, mousy brown hair, and they just kind of cracked on, and I was just this small, bright ginger, bright green blazer. Like, please don't look at me, boy. you know.
Yeah.
And but in direct contrast, I knew some of the skill set I had, and I knew that it was like I wanted to be on stage. I still could perform because I had, I wasn't a total class clown, but I could take that moment for a minute and do just enough where I wouldn't too embarrassed or too. Hand it off to someone else. I was good at always
Yeah.
passing the torch, delegating. So
I was going to say there's nothing wrong with being ginger. My family, I've got a family member, I'm Scottish. So a lot of my
yeah,
family are ginger and they're amazing. They're great people. And my nephew is a wee ginger boy and he's just absolutely gorgeous. So did you find, 'cause do you think the sort of times have changed? But do you think like when you were sort of standing out then, did that, you get a hard time from the other kids? Were you ever picked on?
yeah. This is the thing. I guess in Scotland, like there's a higher concentration of us, But down south, like any way that you're different, like in any way, is I guess as kids we fear the unknown, so we look at people and it can be a gift or it can be a hindrance depending on how you feel about it and how you accept other people's response to it. And mine was a case of feeling small, feeling, so it was more another way of people looking at me when I just wanted to be like everybody else. Now I understand, like, greatest gift in the world for me to also be a redhead, because like the power that I have in myself and the belief that I have in myself, like, when I see young redheads, I'm like, maybe you might have some hard years, but I tell you what, like, you're about to have 25 really good ones. Like, this is, so it's like I always remind them, like, because it's just a difference. That's all it is. But I was, I think back about it a lot. I'm not. I was bullied, but not relentlessly. And that was maybe I've asked myself a lot, like, why did that happen? Was it because I was an easy target? Because I was small? Was it because I was so different to the people that had somehow like honed in on me? Um, but ultimately, I think it's just we're all just children navigating a kind of an adult world at school. Like it's the first time you're brought into this awareness of you're made very aware of your difference. Um, and every like it's almost like how like the squeaky wheel get that old saying, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. Like in Germany they have a similar saying where it's like the nail that sticks out gets hammered down. Right. And so I like for me it's I feel like there's this direct correlation of that. You want the attention, so you make yourself aware, but then other people are like fall in line, so they'll hammer you down, and that's across the board. Everyone's just trying to keep this thing on a steady line. Everybody's like, don't like bring yourself back in. You're being a bit loud. You're being a bit out there. You're a bit wild. Like, so it's. I look back on like bullying now as like, and obviously I had no idea what those guys had going on in their lives at the time, what's happening at home, how they felt about themselves, their own insecurities. But I sit back and think about, were they actually just trying to protect the normality? And I didn't make sense in that because when they look in the mirror, they didn't see me, you know. So
Wow, it's such an adult response, isn't it? I mean, when you're a kid, it's not how you think. And I think, you're right. You look at everybody now and you're like, well, hello, bullies, look at me now. Because I guess that must play in your sort of psyche. I mean, it's human, right? You think, well, you guys gave me a hard time when I was younger, but look, like, I don't need your acceptance now. I'm accepted by thousands, tens of thousands of
mm,
people. So that must feel like pretty good.
I think, yeah, it does. And it's like, so I talk about schools being like the best of a bad bunch, like and that doesn't mean that we're all bad, but you find your people in there.
Yeah.
But the numbers of the pool is just small. So when you're saying, oh, you're accepted by tens of thousands of people, I'm accepted by tens of thousands of my people. And that's what life is just this long line of connections, and we're just trying to I really believe that the meaning of life is connection. It's about the collective energy. And we're always just trying to find the people that we connect with, because it makes our life easier, and it makes we learn about ourselves, and we feel new, like, feelings or older feelings in a richer way. And that's a real gift, is when you can feel something that you felt before, but suddenly it feels brand new. And that's come from a new group of people that have existed. And that's when our shared experiences are like such a powerful gift. um I think when you start taking that around the world, then you realize, like, there's the world is the best of a bad bunch. I just got to find them. So it's like the world.
Yeah.
The world is kind of my school playground now.
See, that's cool, isn't it? I mean, I love two things that you said there. One was about my people, which I think is that you're my type of people, which is
Yeah.
totally right. And about the world being your playground. I mean, that's a pretty cool thing to be able to say. And like, you obviously, you're talking about you were quite lucky in a way, because you might not have been rich, but what you
Mm.
had was music, really was the sort of beating pulse of the family, and what kind of kept, I guess, brought you all together. That was a sort of commonality that you all had. And you were saying you sort of, you made these bands, and again, you make it sound dead easy, but how did you create your first one? Like, you thought, I like music, but bearing in mind you got bullied at school, you maybe had a bit of confidence dented, you knew you were a bit
Mm.
different. So what gave you that drive to say that I'm going to do my first, sort of pull my first band together?
I think we always, when we talk about my people, you naturally you move closer to people that are speaking your language. And if you're an underdog, if you're an outsider, if you feel different, you move to the people that feel different. Quite often they're creatives. They have a slightly different brain. They think artistically. Um, they're the ones asking the questions. They're not quite happy to be hammered down. Do you know what I mean? They're like, let's go and explore. Let's find something that no one else has seen. So I always feel like musicians are just artists. We're explorers. That's what we are. So with the first band, and just quickly, my dad had music, and my mum was an Irish dancing teacher, right? So I grew up in a world of Kayleys and discos. And so it's like from my dad, I had this extensive archive of music and a knowledge of, sound. And from my mum, I had essentially the gift of performance. I really believe I get my strength and my gift of performance from my mother, because you go up and to watch. I spent my weekends at Feshes watching her girls dance and win awards, and I never had the courage to do it. But it all went in. So the first band, it came about because we were at school, and I wasn't really, I was good at sports. I didn't get the same. Sports is a real team thing, but it's a wide team thing. And when I realized you could be subbed out, I was like, well, I don't know if that's for me. Like, I'm not like I feel unique. I would like to play a role where only I can play it. And I think once you commit to that, then you find a way. I wasn't the best singer, could play no instruments. But I hung around with the kids playing music, because music was a part of my soul. And I just didn't say. I just didn't really accept no for an answer. And I knew that if I didn't have the technical ability to be the best singer, like, what I could do is I could be the best performer. And that has got me. I still feel like my ability to perform is what's got me a career. I'm not the great, technically most proficient singer. I'm better now, thank you, Lorna. Like, God bless Lorna. She's an amazing vocal coach, and she's really helped me. But even that, I didn't look for until the last 3 years. That's when I finally accepted that maybe I'm not just a performer. Maybe I am. Maybe I've got a skill here that I can hone. But early on, it was all about performance, and I knew I could just sell something that no one else would do. So in my first band at school, even then, I remember there's pictures of me, and it's like they're playing, all the band are playing, and they're looking down at their instruments, and I'm about like 5 foot off the floor, just midair, just flying, just with a cable trailing, and I'm just like jumping, flying across the stage. Or I just remember thinking, if people are going to come to this gig, yeah, they're going to hear it, but we're not quite there yet. But I can give them something to watch as well. And they'll go away feeling like that was something. At least it was entertaining.
So you talk about fury and rage. So you mentioned that at the beginning. You said something like, when you sing the kind of music that you're into, you talk about the fury and the rage. That's where you can get it all out. What did you mean by that?
So I talk quite eloquently now. We're having this conversation about how I was as a child, and you're right, make it sound quite easy. I only know this now. I knew none of that back then. So I'm just desperately trying to fit in and find my place in the world. And of course, a lot of, through a lot of that, like, you have these feelings you don't know how to navigate. You're growing up in a patriarchal society, from a patriarchal background. You are presented with your identity and who you are, and it might not correlate with what works for society. What are you supposed to do? Like, what happened? You repress it, you push it down. And when you press any kind of pressure like that, it just builds up. You become the canister of, it's a pressure chamber. It needs venting. The rage and the fury. When you find a band like that, that's a safe place to vent and rage your fury at the world, at yourself, at your friends, at your family, whatever it is, in a safe way. The writing was also a vent. You write it was early stages of therapy, trying to figure out these problems in my life. So I'll write them down as lyrics, where I'm saying it, but I'm not. and I'm saying just enough that it can be vague. I don't have to say this is my problem. I can present it in a way where people can say, maybe that's his problem, but I'm probably not going to ask him about it, because also it could mean something else to someone else. So um, I didn't really know how to manage that fury or the rage. I didn't feel like I didn't feel strong. I didn't feel big. I didn't feel like I could fight, or defend myself. I didn't need to really, because I had words. I could talk my way out of things, and failing that, I'd run. But Johnny Lydon said it. Like, anger is a gift. It really is, and but you really have to accept it first, and then you have to understand how to vent it. And if you can do that, then you've got a really powerful tool for, I guess, self-therapizing and self-regulation. And it's something that something that I talk about a lot with men all the time, because okay, so when we talk about patriarchal society and how we're all trying to fit in, I think that the patriarchy is the word, like it's the thing I hate the most about life. It's the worst thing. It's a broken system, because it was designed to help men specifically and oppress women and children, but it doesn't help all men. It oppresses any type of man who is in touch, who feels slightly different. It's designed to help apex predators, alpha males, and it's designed to maintain and perfect toxic masculinity, because that's the kind of work ethic and drive that sustains capitalism. And so without that, like, growing up, when you're trying to fit into a society that just doesn't make any sense to you, but you don't have the awareness of that because you're 16 and you're just like, you're growing up. I didn't even know what patriarchy meant at 16. I probably genuinely learned that word maybe 3 years ago, which is heartbreaking for me, but great, because I can explain it to my daughter who's 7, and I can explain it to her like friends and anyone that I meet. So it's I think that rage just came from trying desperately to fit in and knowing that I never could, and really the feeling of it was crippling my identity the whole way. I didn't know who I was. When you said who's Frank Carter, I was like, God, what a question. I was like, don't hit me with that, Lynn. Straight away, like, no. But yeah, yeah.
No, that's really good. I mean, do you know, that's really brave of you to say that. And without getting into detail, I mean, I get what you're talking about. So I do a lot of presenting, and actually for me, the stage is my safe place. So to present in front of hundreds, thousands of people is actually a safe place to be, because no one can touch you. You have to be good. You have to be on your A game, but you are safe. So I do get it. So maybe after this we can talk more, because I understand exactly what you mean. So, you're really inspiring, because you are, you're different in terms of different in what terms. You felt different, but to me, you're not different. You're just a cool guy. But like, what would you give sort of tips? You gave tips earlier if you want to start a band, but what tips would you give to people that do feel different, that think, I don't fit into, whether it be this workplace, this school, this society? Yeah, what are your wise words there?
It's communication. It's about, the more you talk, the more you share with different people. It's really like we again, you go back to that my people thing. You find a group, and that's really, really important, really powerful, to have a network, a support network. But if you are so aligned with the problems that you all face, you have to make sure the one thing you really, really have to try and fight is that your problems don't not become your identity. Because the minute you believe that you are the sum of your damage. You are damage. You are walking damage, and there is nothing more dangerous in the world than a hurt human. Really, like, so for me, my advice would be to talk. You know, to share as much as possible. Now, it's slightly different. And this, please excuse my like this binary gendering, because it's like it's hard for me to navigate because I haven't really done enough like proper thinking about it. But like young women growing up have I believe a bit more of a support network amongst each other to talk about what's happening in their lives. That's not a coincidence in the sense that it's because they're all desperately trying to survive a patriarchal society. Do you know what I mean? Which doesn't fucking like doesn't want them. Like, so they just go to each other because, and they talk and they share about it, and it's hard work. Excuse me. Sorry. Yeah.
I'm Scottish. Don't worry.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. My men don't, because of the same reason. They live in a patriarchal society which says weakness is the like that's this a no red flag, like that's a hard line. No weakness. You have to be strong. You have to maintain. You have to lead. You're the warrior. You're the soldier. You know, and talking about your problems is you're the weak link in the fence. Yeah. Now I talk in depth about how vulnerability is a strength. It's a power. The minute you start, it's because it's a vent. And the minute you start like talking about your problems, you have this vent, which means you never get to explosion, you know. And that's why we see so many men like losing their minds. Like, that's why suicide is like highest amongst all men, because you know it's the number one killer of men under 40, you know, because they don't have a vent, and they explode. Now, the irony of all of this is we live in a society where men are not. I'm realizing that we're getting up maybe off the topic here. Like, I'm trying to reel it back in. It's about working class to well.
No, keep going. This is cool.
It's so important, you know, because men are told not to talk, but they need to. So what they end up doing is talking to the women in their lives, right? How counterproductive is that? To be leaning on the people that they're oppressing, you know, for the emotional support. Like, how tough the world is. Oh, poor me. Like I cannot, I simply can't go on. I've worked so hard. And then there's the resentment, you know, and the partners in their lives are saying, and I know this is, again, it's quite binary in the gender and it's quite traditional, but we're talking about that specifically, patriarchal, traditional relationships. It's a problem. So it's a huge problem. So, you know, I've actually I've just connected with a group called Beyond Equality, and their role is to send men into workplaces, prisons, schools, to talk about masculinity in a different way. Now, I can't say any more than that, because that's for them, that's them. But like, watch this space, I guess, with that, and that'll be really exciting. But I think to get back to your original point, when we're talking about connection and stuff, I guess all of us have to have an awareness of the connections that we're making, unconsciously, subconsciously, and consciously. And I think society doesn't allow a lot of the ones that we need to happen. It makes it so much harder. So.
Wow, no, that was brilliant. I mean, I think, thank you so much, Frank, for everything today, because I think really what you've really nailed in the head is, you know, no matter where you're from, it's about having your passion, having your true love, the thing that you want to do every day. You're happy to wake up in the morning to do that thing. And also, I really love your point that you've sort of made throughout all of this is about your identity. So whether you have weaknesses or whether you're different, that actually forms who you are as a person. And the world needs different people for it to function. So thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. I'm sure everybody tuning in will really appreciate it too. But yeah, you're a cool guy, and I hope you go from strength to strength. Thank you.
Thank you very much.